Yeah, I'll make that work. No, Marquette though.
Oh, let's see. Next
Yeah.
Wednesday, we're planning to do.
What time will it be? 7?
You down there anyway?
Yeah.
Hello, I'd like to call this village board meeting to order. It is 7:48. All trustees are present tonight. Clerk, has this meeting been publicly announced?
The meeting has been posted and noticed according to law.
Thank you. Our first item of business today is number 4, special order of business. 4A, consider CDA Village Board strategic goals and priorities, planning process, and survey. I see our chair, Mr. Hammond, is here in the audience. Rebecca, did you want to say anything, or?
I'm happy to help in any way that I can. But you'd like to I will happily support you.
All right. Good evening, everybody. So I believe the board has the updated memo. Apologies. The CDA met on Friday and went through the initial draft. So again, the village and the CDA have hired Baker Tilly to assist in the strategic planning process. We've met with them, and one of the aspects we would like to do as the CDA looks forward and establishes strategic priorities for the future, we felt it was important to reach out to other committees and other stakeholders in Shorewood to get their feedback and input on what the CDA should be focusing on, specifically to economic development and housing. I would say, the CDA impacts a lot of different communities, a lot of different stakeholders, and so it's important for us. And as we look forward, we're very interested, the CDA is very interested in having a transparent, open process to get feedback to ensure that what we are establishing as priorities are well-grounded in what others are trying to do and what expectations people have for the community. So we looked at the initial draft. I don't know if the board had a chance to look at that. There were the CDA sort of, after a bit of discussion, we had a very good discussion about this. We sort of realized that a lot of questions were asking the same thing. So we really narrowed it down to really the key questions and to the stakeholders. And so, just to get into that, really what we're looking for is from the committees and stakeholders' perspective, what are the 3 key things we should be looking at, 3 key things we shouldn't be looking at, what are we doing that we shouldn't be doing, what are we not doing that we should be doing, what are sort of the immediate things that you think about the community needs in terms of the CDA's priorities, what are the longer term things, and then one that was added, which I think was a great add, was this question of communication to the various stakeholders in the communities. How your constituents need to be communicated to. We're always trying to figure out how we can, again, do things better, let people know what's going on. So just asking that question, based on your knowledge and experience of your stakeholders, what can we do better? The initial thought was that we would get so this is, the stakeholders and committees are responding with respect to their obligations to their stakeholders. So my initial thought was that we would get one response from a committee. This is their view about the CDA's roles and activities with respect to economic development and housing. And after discussion, I would say my colleagues convinced me that that's the goal. But again, we keep talking about transparency and inclusion, and so if someone on one of these stakeholder groups or committee groups feels strongly that they would like to provide their own response, we are more than happy to take that. Again, I'm still thinking that, because as I think about it, communities should speak with one voice in terms of what's going on, what their priorities are. So, we'll have to see what we get back. If we get multiple responses from one stakeholder group, one committee, that can make it challenging to decide what does this committee need from us. But The priority was transparency, inclusion, getting responses, really getting us continuing on the path of communities working together in the interest of the community. And so, again, it does make sense to rather have more than fewer. With that, again, you have the updated list. You have the listing of committees. I think the only two committees we removed was the Police Commission and the Board of Review, excuse me. We didn't think that their purview related to economic development and housing. And the other thing I think we did was, we're very interested, the way it was first crafted, I think people could have responded just to economic development or just to housing. We're very interested in getting their thoughts on both of those components, because those are the two key things that the CBA focuses on.
Thank you so much for that summary. Trustee Maher.
Yeah, it was one thing I was in past planning exercises by the CDA. There's been a lot of public, like presentation of plans and feedback from the public on this. Is that anticipated at all?
To include
public, you've got these stakeholder committees. Is there a role for the public to respond formally to the strategic plan? Or?
Well, again, I think the public, to some degree, responded through the community survey. That I believe has some questions associated with economic development and housing. And again, it's a possibility. I think our view is that, again, the community groups that we're reaching out to, the stakeholder groups, represent the community. Okay. So if they're doing their job, we're doing our job by getting their feedback as the spokespeople for the various constituencies in Shorewood. So if we're missing key groups, we're more than happy to add them to that.
When we spoke about this with Baker and Tilly at the very beginning, a while back, right, just when we were verbalizing it, I had some concerns and said, similar to Mike's, and what I think I learned was this is a strategic plan for the CDA, which is really internal, whereas a comprehensive plan is something that where you go out and get a lot of feedback from the community. So it's really, we've done our comprehensive planning, and now it's time, what do we want to work on and what direction are we going? And so it's more of an internal thing. I thought it was great that the consultant suggested reaching out to our committees, because that's an internal structure, but it is still representing the public in some way. So I think that is the difference between, it's really hard to pay a small amount of money to do a quick action plan compared to, a strategic plan compared to going out and getting that comprehensive view. The one thing I had mentioned, and Mari might find this interesting, but was we've done a lot of focus groups too, and it's one thing to ask people, what do you want? But it's another thing to give them a market study to show what we lack in the market and what we can sustain, and then ask the question. But it did sound like, so I just didn't want to do the same thing which we've done in the past, which is focus group saying, what do you want? We want a hardware store. Okay, well, we're done, we spent our 30 grand, you know what I mean? Or, we want some affordable housing, do we need it? The only thing that can really tell you that is a market study. And so we are doing a market study at the CDA, and it sounds like the consultant, from the feedback that I got from that question, was that they're going to get the survey, they're going to get the input from the committees, the market study, and then they're going to do some more analysis. So some more work with the CDA and the village board. But that's what I took from it. I did have a lot of concerns about asking people a blank out question, because we already know everybody wants the hardware store and a Mexican restaurant. So.
And the Mexican restaurant.
I know, so now we're narrowed it down. Yes, just
I noticed the stakeholder groups, Shorewood moving forward was added. I just Googled, it's a private Facebook group. Is there a board, or is it a nonprofit? Is there some structure to this?
Yeah.
It's not, there is a board. They're not a nonprofit yet, but I actually suggested we add them because they are a community group, and they meet. They're not really a Facebook group. I mean, they're like a group who their essence is more that they meet in person, and the Facebook is just sort of informational.
And again, just to reiterate the concept of transparency and inclusion, we are more interested in, I mean, if they represent a constituency
So
or
does the
group
Human
of
Relations
people.
Commission, which is internal, is that right? I think that's the real question, which I would agree with Mr. Maher asking it. If you start to put, and I love the group that was named, and I think they have valuable insight, but if you start down that path, you've got, now you've got another art group out there that's, the Artist Guild, and are you gonna ask public art in the Artist Guild? Are you, so you really have to stick to, in my opinion, either you're sticking to village committees, or you're gonna get a lot more suggestions.
Well, then we
So-
need to take off the foundation and the historical society, because they're not village.
And I supported any short moving forward. I think they provide a unique perspective. I do see some of the concerns with kind of the slippery slope, but I think, during the and I don't want to speak for everyone, but my thought process was during the meeting, if we get those requests, more input is better at this point. So if we get 5 or 6 groups that want to provide input, I don't know that we would have a huge problem.
And again, I think we've got the survey down to a fairly concise,
Why don't you just put it on the web then?
focus, so, to get responses.
I mean, why don't you just put it on the web then, to be fair and equal? Right? And anyone that wants to participate could.
Yeah, again, we're open to, I guess the thought of this is, committees have a responsibility to represent their constituency, it's not a profession, but that's, they need to be informed and educated about what their constituency needs. That's, I think, what we're interested in gathering, just to be frank. I'm not interested in Peter Hammond's personal opinion about what the community needs. I think we want, in order for them for their constituency, for them to represent their constituency, for their constituency to have a valuable experience in Shorewood, tell us what that is, based on your educated, informed perspective of representing that group. Again, we got the personal opinion through the survey. Well, I agree, we could have added more questions, but there are a lot of questions in there. Anyway, we did get some information. So I'm trying to we are trying to differentiate that a little bit. Again,
So if the Shorewood Network Facebook group wanted to be represented, it could, there's a lot of groups out there. I really would stay away from that. I would stick to the village committees, or you need to open it up to like the Jewish Community Center and the Alliance of France. And there's so many groups, the veterans, the VA, that where do you stop? And not that, but I don't feel as a board member fair and equal by saying these groups and not these, or open to everyone, but not everyone knows
that's
about it.
exactly right. It's either committees, that's it, or.
Like our committees will know from the village because we're gonna send something to them, but then if you start sending it to an outside organization in just one or two,
Yes.
and then you're choosing which organizations
Agreed.
outside the village. So
That's what we
it's
don't want
very,
to do.
it's hard. It's almost like the holiday decoration conversation. It's just hard. We do have a Human Relations Commission, so they represent similar interests.
Well, if that's the will of the board, then we have to take off the Historical Society and the Shorewood Foundation.
Are those community partners though, or village partners?
They're not
Mhm.
village committees, we don't make appointments to them, we don't fund them.
We have a village liaison to them
Yeah, we don't have a
What's-
village
what's
liaison
the
or
scope
any
of-
official.
for women's website. What did you say, I'm sorry?
Oh, no, it's okay. So the initial list was generated actually from me just looking at a list of our committees and commissions and then affiliated groups. So those that were listed as affiliated groups would be the BID,
We make their appointments, so yes.
Shorewood Foundation, Shorewood Historical
We
Society,
have trustee liaison.
Shorewood Recreational Advisory
We have
Committee,
trustee liaison. We make appointments.
Shorewood School Board.
And we have committees with them.
Would you speak loud enough so that those of us out here can hear you?
Sure. I'm sorry, I can go through it again.
It wasn't just directed to you, I'm directing that to everyone.
Oh, okay, but I'm happy to go through it again. The ones that were affiliated were the Business Improvement District,
And I say we make appointments, we do the appointments for that committee.
The Shorewood Foundation,
We provide the secretary that takes the notes.
the Shorewood Historical Society,
We have a trustee liaison.
Shorewood Recreational Advisory Committee,
We appoint members.
and the Shorewood School Board.
We have a joint by board with them.
The only other group on here that's not a committee, commission, or affiliated group was the department heads and key staff, which is something that was generated from the initial meeting we had with Baker Tilly, to provide some comments there.
Trustee Walker.
And I agree with President Rosick in that if we are opening this up to outside agencies that are not affiliates of the village or not direct committees, then we would want to either open it up to more, or we would just want to simplify the process and go with what we can regulate. It's Shore moving forward, it's a great organization. We have many great community groups, but they're not governed by the same rules and regulations that the rest of us and the rest of these stakeholders are. So, or at least not to my knowledge, and I don't know that, so I would also go for maybe removing that group.
Trustee Warren?
I mean, do we want to, and maybe this is an unpopular idea, but do we want to list out the village affiliated, the ones that were, like, just listed out, and then say the survey will be made available to other parties upon request? I mean, do we want to cut it off from third parties, or do we want to say, if you come in and want to share this information, we're okay with that?
And we are okay with that. I think, again,
I think it'd be okay. What I believe Trustee Bachor is echoing is to invite, to send just to certain outside organizations to participate is not the same as saying, and anyone else that would like to participate can ask us, because you're not singling out and picking. Trustee Mentor.
I mean, one of my thoughts in recommending Shore moving forward is that we do not have a housing advocacy group. We don't have a nonprofit agency or even, I mean, there's an informal group of parents of adult children with disabilities who've been looking for some housing opportunities. But other than that group, on the housing side, we don't have really, we're too small, and we don't have our own advocacy groups around the housing issue. So I suggested SMF as a way to broaden, because I think there may be a lot of overlap between, for example, people on the Shorewood Foundation and the Public Art Committee and the bid board. I think we're going to find a lot of overlap in some of these organizations, and Shorewood moving forward is really a different constituency and one that may have an important outlook on housing issues specifically. I mean, I understand the logic of let's keep it all to one particular thing, but we also want to get information that's going to be useful, and so try to, looking for organizations that might represent sort of a different constituency may be an opportunity for us to get more feedback on housing in particular. So that was my thinking on that.
Trustee Bachor?
I like the idea of opening it up to as broad a base as possible, but I don't think it's up to us to define what the broad base is beyond the groups that are affiliated with the village. Meaning, what I want to say by that is, I get that, you have some experience with Shorewood moving forward, and that this may, what I've heard from you, it may be a situation, maybe this, but without the absence of the knowledge of that other information as a village representative, I would not be comfortable selecting organizations outside of the village or outside of nonprofits that we don't really necessarily have a strong either relationship with already, experience, or even understanding of what a lot of the objectives are. As far as just targeting, of course, anyone can participate in this, but I would just, for an official document, want to remove that organization from this.
Trustee Curran?
What was Baker Tilly and the overall sentiment of the CDA in regarding to Shorewood moving forward being included in that list? Was that
I don't know who they are.
Baker Tilly did not have a comment. They were looking for us to identify who to send it to. And during the scope of our meeting with them, it was discussed that it was committees and commissions. That's all I can recall. We met on it in August, so.
Yeah, and then it was brought into staff, and I even said I didn't want department heads, or I objected to that, but
What about for the CDA? Like, what was the CDA's platform? Or was it?
I think we had discussion and everybody agreed pretty quickly that, I mean, again, the overarching theme here is the transparency and inclusion, and so if you know, I guess I don't know the scale and scope of other, you know, if there are other organizations that have a, you know, for lack of a better word, an executive committee or group that is responsible for, like, I don't think the, you know, the web, yeah. I think there are some where it's sort of, they're groups, but if there is a person or a group that believes they represent that larger group, I think we want to hear from them. And is that 100 more? I don't, you know, I guess.
So, yeah,
I
there
don't
probably
know.
might be 100 more. And again, I think the trustees last word, I can get at least 20, but no, I'm just saying, we're not saying, what I'm saying, what I'm suggesting is anyone can participate. If Shorewood moving forward wants to, trustee mentor or anyone else can say, hey, it's the manager's memo or wherever it's going to be, and if you'd like to participate, ask for a copy. And anyone can do that, and if only 2 groups do it, that's great, but it's the selecting and invitation that's a little difficult. And I would like to also say that for the police commission and for singling out the police commission and the Board of Appeals, I keep them in. Board of Appeals here's all your housing variances. Board of Review is all about assessments. I have no idea why we eliminate either of those, especially the police commission, because crime, housing, I mean, I just feel like, well,
Okay, I thought I was told police commission was more hiring, firing.
So-
it is.
Right, they hire, fire, and discipline.
I understand. It's just weird. We just take them all, and, I mean, they're volunteers at this village, and I think that's what we were getting at with all the committees.
I think we have to remember that the CDA is a separate organization and that this is their survey, not our survey. And maybe we offer this as like recommendations to them, but, you know, the CDA can make the final decision.
Don't we hold the contract? No?
So the CDA is financially funding the strategic planning. However, both the village board and the CDA are strategic planning together.
Yeah.
Which is why it was brought to this group for review.
We want to be on the same page. I mean, you know, I mean, I'm fine if the initial invite goes to this sort of specifically defined committees, but you know, I don't know how to get a list. I'd like to get a list of what we would consider to be other community entities that are
Lines of
we would
France.
think valuable, and I would like for us to reach out to them and ask them to participate. If they don't want to, that's fine, but we would like to do that. If it's hundreds, then maybe not, but I'm thinking it could be manageable. And again, I think a lot of groups, committees, again, this is not my personal opinion about economic development and housing. This is in my role as representing this group. What do I want to provide? What information and feedback do I want to
And
provide?
that's hard with outside committees, because you don't know their schedule and timing, so
Yeah.
it might be that the board doesn't meet a certain time. But regardless, when we did the community survey, it was single, but again, it was just open to anyone. It was on the web, you know, anyone could do it, so I'm not saying to do that, but we didn't invite specific people or specific groups. I think that's what you can do. I don't know where you're planning to post this.
It was not, the
It's not to
intention
be
was not
posted.
to distribute it
Yeah.
to
Just
the
internal?
general public, that it was only going to go
Like in the
to
internet?
specific groups. So that's why, just
Okay.
for initial draft, that's why
I
I
see what you're saying.
listed our existing groups and what.
But you could say in the manager's memo, we're doing this, and if you're a group and you'd like to participate, we can send you a copy. If you wanted to reach out and give the opportunity, that's another way. Which is fair.
I'm just thinking like there might be a group of small entrepreneurs that are in, you know, they get together every once a month and chit chat, or there may be people at business.
I'd love to hear from them.
Retail people that aren't
Right, I mean, if we
really
did,
good, that
instead
have lots
of
of good
including other
ideas.
people on,
I
maybe we
mean,
put it out in general, if there's another group, and then they can contact them
Exactly.
directly.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
School
Yep.
board,
Yeah.
school district
Yep.
information.
Yeah.
The PTA, the PTO, I mean, there's so many different groups that,
We talked about putting it on.
I mean, not that they all want to, but if you just let it out there once, and it's fair for all,
My only
or limited.
question of clarification on that would be, then am I sent, so initially I was reducing this to the committee chairs, with these people and providing this information, because we have staff liaisons that go to all of these groups, with the exception of Shorewood moving forward. So that was gonna be my motive, just so am I still sending it to them, and then outside of that list that was initially put on there, then I would just put it out in general. If you have a group, please contact me, I can get you
have a group and that group has opinions on development, economic development or housing, we'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, that's good.
So that,
Oh, I'm sorry. You're good. You're so quiet over there. Yes.
are you, did you, yeah, just wanted to be clear, so that I would be sending it to the initial list, not including Shorewood moving forward, because it wouldn't have been on that initial list. So, and then putting it out to the community at large for all groups,
And then we're adding
including
back,
that.
and adding back in the police commission and,
Board of Appeals. Board of Review. Housing systems.
Okay. And then what would be the method of getting additional input? You would put something in the village manager's manual? How would groups get to you? How would,
They would need to contact me directly.
and how would they know that that was an option?
I would tell them that the manager's memo.
Okay.
So my only point of clarification when it comes down to committees, police commission doesn't meet, or does not meet on a regular basis unless they're spurred by a specific issue, so they don't.
Can you send it to the chair and they distribute it by email to their members and get that back and the chair forwards it back to you?
So in
Or is
this
that not-
scenario, committee chairs are responsible for filing their survey for their committee online. So let's use the police commission as an example. So they're not filing, the request here, we're really focused on that combined response.
And it is not, it doesn't break open meeting laws to do it by email. For the chair to send it to them and to gather the responses back and send it in. I think so.
The chair wouldn't be, we're not holding it to the chair in this process.
I'm saying for like
Yeah.
board review or ones that don't meet.
Right, so we're not doing that portion of the process. So when these committee chairs go in, they're clicking that this is the committee they're submitting on behalf of. So they would have need to have a dialogue with these other people, which would be a need for a
public.
meeting.
Right, that's what we're
Correct.
asking. It can't be,
Right,
it'd have to be at a meeting in public, an open meeting. Correct, because we can't survey.
Correct.
Okay.
So you should, and then you probably specify that within the email, that underline you have to have a meeting or themselves.
Call a special meeting if they want to. If not, they don't participate.
That's,
I mean, they don't participate then.
Attorney Baker, I would have a question if board review is adjourned for 2019, if they could call a special meeting, because I do not believe they could.
No.
No. So that would be,
Okay.
we would have to remove them.
Okay.
okay, so let's run through the scenario of police commission. Chief numbers in the room.
Okay, so if they wanted to participate, they didn't have a meeting within that time frame, they could call a special meeting, and if not, they don't have to participate.
If you invited, you don't have to come.
So that your chair will decide, the chair of the commission.
I mean, yeah, depending on if they can get a quorum when they want.
Great.
It might be it could be any of the organizations we send it to, they might have a bi-month, like they may not meet.
Well, and
So-
just because a committee gets it doesn't mean that the committee necessarily needs to provide a response. I mean, we make that kind of clear, we ask, but if for some reason they don't want to, that's okay too.
Or they're not meeting or something.
Right.
I just be very clear that the meeting has to be placed in public.
That was really helpful.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments? When would this survey be going out?
Friday.
Friday. Okay, a Friday. All right, Thursday. So does anyone have a motion?
I'll move to approve the CDA Village Board strategic goals and priorities planning process and survey.
Motion by trustee Bachers. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by trustee Warren. Any further discussion?
Oh, I guess,
Yes.
I'm assuming with the removal of the, with the edits that we discussed.
Reflect the edit.
To reflect.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
Okay with that?
Do you
Still
still
okay with
okay with
that?
that second? Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Looking forward to the results and the housing market study.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Our next item for special order of business, is, we're done with special order of business, so we are on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, a second. Any items for removal?
alternate E
Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda with item 5B removed, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. We'll now take up the item you removed, which was 5B, consider committee of the whole and village board minutes, October 21st, 2019. Trustee Amento.
Yeah, on the very last page, page 12, 4.1, village board members are reminded that it is village board policy not to reconsider items because some village board members may be missing as this sets a bad precedent. I mean, that was the statement, but it actually is not village board policy, so could we say that it's preferred not to reconsider items? There is no village board policy that says this.
I missed it, but that's okay. All right.
It's preferable not to consider items because some,
Are we agreeing with that? I mean, I'm fine with it, but we have the will of the board.
Oh, you mean the word preferable?
Yeah, I mean, or do you all think it's preferable? If we don't have a policy, it's all up to us to define what's preferable.
we could say village board members, some village board members prefer not to reconsider items, we could say that.
That's fine with me.
That's kind of
Okay. I just don't want it to say it's a policy, but it's not a policy.
Yeah, or we could just strike the whole thing.
Did we find that in the rules? No, it's not a policy. But okay, so any other edits? I just had a question on, and I think this is right, is it 5, then this is number 4, page 4? When we were talking, is this the holiday, I'm not right minutes, I hope I am, holiday decoration policy?
Yes.
Okay, so it says the first non-indented paragraph, President Roszak moved, seconded by Trustee Warren, to defer approval of the signal box project. Oh, here, then this is different, okay. In the amount of $5,000, approve a sole source contract for the film vendor in accordance with the purchasing policy and accounts payable. And then later, I make a motion to amend. I don't remember that, but I might have, but I just remember saying you couldn't do it. I don't remember making a motion to approve a sole source contract.
It wasn't, I watched the
Okay.
whole tape, yep.
I've done that.
I mean, I can definitely go back and rewatch it again, but,
I just don't remember that at all. Okay. I can remember. And there's just one other thing, I don't know if we want to add it, but under the page 5, when Chief Whitaker was presenting for borrowing of the money for our Shorewood Fire Station, we could insert a line that says some board members questioned why are we borrowing to pay ourselves for the 17% of the project costs. If it ever came up again, it's important to me, we're borrowing to pay ourselves 17% of the project costs. That's how much the Shorewood contributes to all of them as bonding projects. And it was like, we didn't know what the interest was, but it was ridiculous that we were borrowing to pay ourselves. So, anyways, I just thought if it comes up again, I prefer people remember that, but
No, I don't know how many people do it, just go back and read them.
that's fine. You don't have to add it, but it's okay.
All right, good motion.
I'll move to approve minutes for committee of the whole and the board minutes for October 21st, 2019.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Trustee Mentis, second by Trustee Bachhorst. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on to public hearing, number 7. There is none scheduled for today, is that correct?
that is correct.
Okay, and then we do have, move on to number 8, citizens to be heard. We have one sheet filled out for citizens to be heard. And if there's any further that I don't have sheets for, please feel free to fill it out and bring it up to the clerk. So I'll call up Susan Armour-Seether. Hi, Susan. If you just want to come to the microphone and state your name and your address.
My name is Susan Armour-Seidman. My address is 2412 East Stratford.
Thank you.
Several years ago, there was a motorcyclist traveling on Prospect Avenue, approaching the intersection of Stratford Court. There was a yield sign on Stratford Court, but it was placed very low, so that the motorist traveling on Stratford may have not seen the sign. The motorcyclist was hit and killed by the motorist. The next day, the village raised the sign, the yield sign, so that it would be more prominently placed and visible. My alley has an issue with visibility as motorists exit the alley, many at not a very slow speed. I want to thank Wesley for replying to my emails regarding this issue. The issue of the alley at the east, overgrown shrubs blocking visibility, has finally been attended to. On the west, the Stratford and Menlo Alley that exits on Prospect, the view of the sidewalk and oncoming traffic from the north is blocked by this gigantic garbage receptacle and even larger fence that encloses it. There's a lot of foot traffic right there on Prospect. There are a lot of kids in the neighborhood, a lot of people who walk their dogs, and an inordinate amount of foot traffic coming and going from the university on that block. I'm giving you this opportunity to do something about this visibility issue, to prevent another person being killed or injured because the visibility is non-existent as we exit this alley. I'm asking you to have this apartment building move this garbage receptacle and its accompanying fence, or do away with the fence in such a way that it's not obstructing the view of people exiting the alley. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thanks, Trustee Warren, for corresponding. Has staff been involved at all?
I think she's referring to
Next
this
item.
as 9A.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Anybody else that wants to be heard today? If you come up to the microphone with your name and address, and then you can just fill out a sheet when you leave or whenever, just so we have a record of it.
Well, I'm on your agenda though, so I think I'm the next item.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want to go to that right away.
We can hear it under that agenda item if you would like.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, we do either one, but yeah. Okay, so we'll close out citizens be heard, and we'll open up new business. 9A, consider application for a special privilege to allow a refuge cart and enclosure within the right-of-way at 3554 North Prospect Avenue. Does do we need a summary for any reason?
Does the board need to recap, or it was all included within the meeting or not? Do I have the current progress here? Any additional questions?
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Okay. My name is Joel Peck, and I own the building that was just discussed at 3554 Prospect. It's a little confusing, I think, that this has come up. My wife and I bought this building a little over 17 years ago, and the dumpster has always been at that location. It's not a giant dumpster, it's a 2-yard dumpster, because the apartment building is a 9-unit apartment building. And the dumpster has been there, I don't know how long, all the years we've owned the building, and probably quite a few years before that, but I don't know the history, beyond that. It was that way when I bought the building. I think it was 4 or 5 years ago that Erica Lang, some of you know who she is, I can't remember what her title was, but she came to me and said, I would like you to build an enclosure around your dumpster where it sits. And I said, okay, why? It's been that way for years. Why do you want that now? He said, well, she was, I don't know if she was new on the job or whatever, but she decided it would look better with an enclosure. And I didn't argue with her. I said, probably, but it's gonna take me putting new concrete in, new support posts and everything else. So that's what she wanted me to do, and she wanted me to add shrubbery along the side, because there's a parking space. I don't know if anybody's seen paperwork on any of this, you've kind of seen that, you've got that. There really isn't any good place to put this dumpster. The building's built in kind of a hill, a little bit of a hill, and the disposal company that picks this up wants it by the alley so that they can drive their dumpster into it and pick it up. Not their dumpster, their trucks into it. So they made me put up the enclosure and the shrubbery. I since ripped out all the shrubbery to make it more visible as you're driving through the alley. I don't see it as big of a problem as just been presented before me. I'd be willing to take the enclosure down, take all the wood out of it if that's what it would take. But it's on my property, but there's a right-of-way, I guess, that Shorewood has, so many feet beyond the sidewalk. I have limited parking there. I have 8 parking spaces. I have more than 8 tenants in the building. I have some couples that live in the building. And 4 of the apartments use tandem parking, or they got park in front of the other. So it's really difficult. I hate to rip out another parking space and put it over next to the garage, which would eliminate a parking space. And that would be a big problem. And I know I've had Bart from Shorewood here over there looking at it, and I don't know if I'm speaking for you or not, but he doesn't see an easy way to rectify it other than taking the signage or the enclosure down. And I'd be willing to do that if that's what would solve the problem. That's pretty much it.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the board?
The dumpsters in the neighbors are look next to the south, or it's in essentially their view down the street. It'd be like people leaving their dumpsters out on the street, or their carts out on the street all week.
Well, I don't know where else we would put it. There's no good place to put it. It's a 2-yard dumpster. And they're not, it's from here to here, it's about that big. The fencing comes around the corner like this, and that's just the way Erica wanted me to build it, and I went along with it. And now I'm told that it's a problem, which.
Trustee Linton?
Bart, it's entirely in the right of way, correct?
Correct. It's not on the sidewalk, it's beyond the sidewalk. After the sidewalk, there's a fence, and then there's the dumpster.
Yeah, we have photographs.
Okay, all right. So, I don't know where else I'm gonna go with it without eliminating a parking space, and I'd be pretty upset if I had to, eliminate parking, because it's in their leases that they get parking.
Trustee Buckles?
So it's my understanding then from reading the memo and what you've relayed tonight that in the past, village employee, so it was the planning development director, Eric Lang at the time, 5 years ago,
Right.
instructed you and said this is okay, you have to make
Absolutely.
these modifications. So, 53% of our residents rent in the village of Shorewood, and we all, as residents and board members, we constantly hear it. We're undergoing a major parking circulation study right now too. So at this point, and also having lived in a multiplex in the past in Seattle, where they were unwilling to let go of one parking spot because parking was such a premium there as well, to even have recycling, and that was Seattle, which is very green. So I understand, a lot of the constraints, and like you said, the tandem parking, moving the cars and stuff like that. So I would say to this board, if we are looking for an alternative, that we really respect the fact that this gentleman has been in the past instructed by village staff to do what he is currently doing, and then now is being told something else, and that parking is tricky for all of us, but especially for those that don't have driveways, don't have garages that they have to share in this situation. So if we look for a solution, I think we should really keep that in mind.
get to you, I just have one question for our planning director. Is it is the reason that the staff is recommending removal is a major safety concern? And is that because of was it because of everything, or is it because of the wood?
It came to our department through a complaint-based, generated by a complaint-based. In looking at it, if it was a new request, in my professional opinion, would not allow it as a new request. To Mr. Peck's point, it's been there for a long time.
Not allow it because?
In my memo, I indicate that it's within a 10-foot vision triangle, which I typically would not prefer something to be over 3 feet in height. And so that is not a
How tall?
code, that is a professional opinion.
Well, I know what you're saying, but it's just the dumpster and the wall are two different heights.
Yes.
And so the dumpster is approximately, if you took down the wall
Say 4 feet.
4 feet and you're saying nothing over 3, is that what you just said? Okay.
That's my professional opinion.
Oh, it's gotta be somewhere, if you talked about triangles.
Right, I mean, other communities have different definitions of vision triangles, and that's a common one that I've referenced in the past.
Okay, trustee Bachhorst and then Amenta, and then, did you ever have,
And then I have a question, this is all for Bart, regarding the vision triangle. So that tight alley behind the boulangerie on Oakland and Lake Bluff, where they have mirrors, is that a solution or something that's been kicked around for this as well? Or I understand it's a little different, and the mirrors are, I believe, placed on buildings.
If that could alleviate site, issues, I think that would be an opportunity to discuss. I'm less familiar with that particular installation, but the only objection that I've offered is a vision issue. So if vision can be clarified in a different manner. The initial conversation with Joel was to see if we could push it further north, just so it clears up some distance from the alley to the sidewalk, but it's not feasible based on a height difference of the concrete there. And so my initial meeting with him, I thought we could push it there. That wasn't incredibly feasible. The only other solution that I offered at the time would be to remove the parking space, which I understand is valuable and difficult. And so at that point, we really couldn't come up with a solution on site to move it that would remedy it in terms of that site. So if mirrors could be utilized, I would be open to that. I'm just not familiar with it.
And as a follow-up, so if we were to ask them to use a parking space, would the village be able to grant a parking space on the street for the complex to make up for that?
I would need to confirm with Diane if that
for a hardship permit,
additional
their money?
Well, at cost or whatever, I mean, we would be taking a private, I mean, this is really tricky with the limited amount of parking. And we have 1 hour parking, we have a lot of parking regulations down the south side of Shorewood.
It's 2, it's not 1.
Regardless, it's a lot different than those of us that have park driveways. and
Trustee
garages.
Menta, and then,
Yeah,
And then you
I was also gonna suggest that we grant a hardship parking permit there to deal with the parking situation. But the other thing that Bart points out in his memo is that special privilege permit was granted by a staff person without board approval. So, and she did not have authority to grant that special privilege permit. And I understand that's not your problem,
Right.
but I just want to point out that it was not valid when it was granted, whenever that was.
Can I comment?
okay,